Thanks for staying with us. It's still iBrandTV, and it's our special talking about Democracy Day, the commemoration. It took place yesterday, but we're still celebrating that today. Now, this year's Democracy Day brings Nigeria's record of uninterrupted civilian rule to 23 years, and Nigerians have experienced vast, diverse experiences rather, from insecurity to unemployment, rising debt profile, talking about the economy, as well as poor becoming and infrastructure rapidly collapsing as well. Now, the question is the profile of the system over the last 2 decades. How well has our democracy grown? And that's what we're reviewing over the course of this discussion. Now, joining us to discuss this is Jide Ologun, a lawyer and a political analyst, as well as Bolahon Olojede, a public affairs analyst as well. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for joining us.
Nice to be here.
Yeah, good to have you. Now, let me begin with you, Mr. Olojede. The fact that, yes, we're celebrating 23 years of uninterrupted democracy. Let's look at the indices of democracy. Do we see them playing out in the Nigeria of today? For instance, if you check out the papers, you'd see stories of insecurity splattered all over the papers. Are we reaping the dividend of democracy in that regard?
Okay. Insecurity can still happen even under a military rule. As a matter of fact, the first Chad military task force was set up by Abacha, and that was 1994. There are declassified CIA reports that show that 30 years ago, in the 80s, the CIA and the intelligence world had foretold what we're currently witnessing. However, one would have thought that by virtue of all this intelligence information being available, the government, I mean, starting from the first one in 1919 up till now, should have been able to do much better than what Nigerians are witnessing right now. I'll give you an example. As we speak, 12 years or 13 years after Boko Haram, not a single sponsor of terror in Nigeria has been identified, prosecuted, and punished. It doesn't show seriousness on our part. If other people, if UAE could identify 5 sponsors, prosecute them, jail them in UAE, and probably in the course of their investigation, they will have revealed a lot of information to the Nigerian side of the story. Even
the Nigerian president has come out to say several times that he knows the financiers and the sponsors of this. I remember the minister, the attorney general had said something like that. Oh, we've identified this number. Where are they? 13 years down. When are we going to prosecute them? When are we going to punish them? For as long as we're not doing our bit, and I think we're not doing our bit well enough. That is the reality. So Nigerians could not be said to have received the dividend of democracy as much as we could in the area of security. That's the reality. Let me hear your thoughts.
You know, let's talk about democracy. That started in Greece. Athens in Greece. It's the government of the people, by the people, and for the people. And it was focused on managing resources to create commonwealth for common good. And if you focus on that, it should be easy to enhance the fortune of a society. But interestingly, the society in Nigeria did not outrightly emerge as a democratic society. If you trace it back to 1914, when we were amalgamated by those who came to colonize us for their economic benefits. So it was like joining people together who have failed to synchronize their visions, missions, and efforts to develop as a people. And it's still what we're experiencing today. So we have witnessed regional engagements that have eroded the essence of democracy. You look at the 1953 Kano riots. It was a regional issue. There was a motion moved in the southern region that let's go for independence. The northern class said no, we are not ready for independence. And the fight broke out. They started killing. Until today, we have not been able to agree on where to go. And it's still playing out now. The rotation, the regionalism, the marginalization. So, because when we put all these arguments together, democracy is just a system of government. Let me isolate religion as an issue. The UAE is managed by Muslims. It's a prosperous society. I assume, in fact, it's not an assumption, US is managed by a Christian. The present president,
Joe Biden.
They have prosperity. I have not gone to find out the religion of Lee Kuan Yew that translated Singapore from a troubled little coastal region in 1965 to a paradise, one of the best places to live and work in the world today. So we have deep problems. And like you brilliantly mentioned, the issue of insecurity has been with us from inception. Absence of trust, lack of coming together to benefit from the overflowing resources God has given us. And that is why when you even look at the issue of oil and gas, a region is claiming it belongs to us, not because it is physically deposited there, but because they are not, it appears as if another region is the one benefiting. Who are the owners of the oil blocks in Nigeria? So we have the issue of unfairness, injustice in their society. And I believe that when we begin to touch the basics of why we are here, which is the June 12th election, it also formed the foundation of annulling that election. Because some power brokers just felt that, this thing is drifting. It almost played out in the recent primary, where consensus was thrown in. They debated openly that it is turn of the north, is the turn of the south, is the turn of the... And my big question is that, what tribe does crude oil belong to? What tribe does gas belong to? What tribe does gold belong to? All the blessings God has given this nation. So for me, it's the choice we have made. And I have listened to some of the key players. For example, when General Salami retired, came out recently, I think that report was January 24, 2022. He was saying that he did not kill MKO Abiola, that some people visited from the US, stories that didn't really join well. So why did you annul an election that broke down the barrier of religion, barrier of ethnicity, barrier of regionalism? People came out. Option A4 as put in place by Professor Humphrey Nwosu, a political
Inec.
Exactly. And somewhere along the line, that election took place on the 12th of June, 1993. It was annulled on the 24th of June, 1993. And eventually in 1998, this character was taken out. And the government claims that he died. Yes, he died. But how many years after have we been able to resolve the crisis that are plaguing this nation? So I think it's time for everyone to sit back now, look at Nigeria. What is government? The management of resources to create commonwealth for common good. And finally, what is the primary purpose of government? It's in section 14 subsection 2 of the Nigerian Constitution 1999 as amended, that says that the security and the welfare of the people shall be the primary purpose of government. And I ask a big question. Years down the line, after annulling that election results, are we secured in the country? Are we united in the nation? Do we have prosperity? In fact, until recently when India took over, Nigeria has been was declared the capital of poverty in the world. And it's not just the poor man that is affected here. Even how many of them, I keep asking this question, sir.
There's still so much to talk about, but I have to hold your thoughts there. We will be playing President Muhammadu Buhari's Democracy Day speech, and then when we come back, we'll focus on that. Please stay with us.
Today, June the 12th, marks another Democracy Day anniversary and an occasion to celebrate freedom and unity of our nation. From 1999, we consistently celebrated Democracy Day to mark the end of military rule and the return of power and control into the hands of those freely elected by the people. On this day, Nigerians recommit themselves to ensuring we protect and preserve the ideals of democracy. In 2018, we moved Democracy Day from 29th of May to the 12th of June. This change was to remind all Nigerians of one free election, after which the presumed winner, along with Nigerians, were denied their rights and their choice. On June 12, 1993, Nigerians saw the best in our citizens as we all went out to vote peacefully. By June 24, 1993, we also saw the worst of our leadership as the elections were annulled. We must never forget the sacrifices of the heroes of Nigeria's democracy during 1993. Their patriotism and peaceful struggle should guide our actions, especially when it comes to electing our leaders and holding them accountable now and in future. Fellow Nigerians, this is my last Democracy Day speech as your president. By June 12, 2023, exactly 1 year from today, you will already have a new president. I remain committed and determined to ensure that the new president is elected through a peaceful and transparent process. It is important for all of us to remember that June 12, 2023 will be exactly 30 years from 1993 presidential elections. In honor and memory of one of our national heroes for democracy, Chief MKO Abiola, GCFR, we must all work together to ensure this transition is done in a peaceful manner. I am hopeful that we can achieve this. The signs so far are positive. Recently, all registered political parties conducted primaries to select their candidates for the 2023 general elections. These primaries were peaceful and orderly. Those who won were magnanimous in their victories. Those who lost were gracious in defeat. And those aggrieved opted to seek judicial justice as opposed to jungle justice. I followed the party primaries closely from the state level to the presidential level. I was very impressed to see across all the political parties that most candidates ran issue-based campaigns. The language and the tone throughout were on the whole measured and controlled. Another positive that came from the 2022 party primaries was a significant increase in women and youth, particularly across all parties. I was very pleased to see this development. This augurs well for the future. These trends clearly show the level of maturity our democracy has achieved in the last 23 years. As we move into the general election campaign season, we must sustain this mature attitude to campaigning and ultimately voting. We must never see it as a do or die affair. We must all remember democracy is about the will of the majority. There must be winners and losers. I will therefore take this opportunity on this very special day to ask all candidates to continue running issue-focused campaigns and to treat opponents with dignity.
Thank you for staying with us. Still commemorating yesterday's June 12 Democracy Day. And of course, now we're focusing on President Muhammad Buhari's speech. We're going to be dissecting that with Jide Ologun and Bala Olojede. They're still right here with us. Thank you for staying with us, gentlemen.
You're welcome.
Now, let me come to you, Mr. Ologun. Looking at the president's speech, considering all of the things he has mentioned, saying that, yes, this is his last speech as a president of Nigeria, last speech, Democracy Day speech as a president of Nigeria, and promising to continue to enforce the element of democracy. But one of the key elements of democracy is protecting the right of the people. And that is the right to speech, right to life. But when you look at this current day government, the government of President Muhammad Buhari, do you see the elements as concerns the right to life, right to speech, especially when it comes to protest and people having dissenting views to the government of the day? Do you see him instituting that part of democracy?
You know, permit me to put it under the purview of perception. Perception can differ. For the person of President Muhammad Buhari, I don't know what his perception of human rights are. But from the angle of a Jide Ologun, I think there has been gross abuse. And that's a dangerous thing in the society. You see, and I have a very present reference. What happened at the Lekki toll gate will not go away.
The NTAS protest.
It remains like what happened on June 24, 1993. It was explained away, but not finally explained. You see, because you saw the right of people to express their feelings dealt with in a certain way that leaves many questions to be answered. You now come to fundamental human rights. If you read Section 15 and Section 16 of the Nigerian Constitution 1999 as amended, there are provisions there that says the government should provide me maximum happiness. Go and read it. It's there. Reasonable minimum living wage, care of the old, affordable housing, different beautiful provisions. In fact, Section 18 says that the government must provide education for all citizens. So when you look at it from all this stage, and you come to the point that right now, what is the unemployment rate in Nigeria? As we discussed June 12 in this studio, we are parading about 2,000 megawatts of electricity. In fact, I read this morning, sadly, that the grid had collapsed again. You see, what is happening in the economic environment? It's part of my fundamental human right to have a sense of security going into the future. But I know that the total indebtedness of my country is about 39 trillion naira. It was about 12.12 trillion naira in March 2015.
It's over 40
so
now.
When I put all this together, you know, I may want to argue in the court with my president that, sir, where is your perception coming from? But we have heard some people tell us this has been the best season for Nigeria. It's their perception. But go out there, go to Epodo Market, go to Yaba, go and look at faces of people. Go and interview them.
Let me come to Mr. Olojede. Yes, I hear you, Ologun, saying that it is about that you're not sure of the perception of the president when it comes to human rights. But should it be a case or a situation of perception, or what should be as concerns the constitution of the country?
Well, perception do have a role to play. And this is how it works.
But he was put in office as a result of a constitution, not by perception.
Not by perception. See, in reality, for a president, especially a president like him, I think he has a caucus that he listens to, and that it is not necessarily the pulse of the society. So if you have some people that you listen to, when they come to you and tell you this is what is going on, that is what you take. And I've seen this incidentally play out even in smaller organizations, including private organizations, in which the CEO is truly oblivious of what is going on the floor shop. So that is why there's something called management by walking around. A CEO is meant to leave that his office, take a walk on the shop floor, engage with the ordinary. That is when you begin to see the reality of what is playing on. In real life, I work with a bank who did a cutover from one application to the other. Now, by virtue of that cutover, the tellers could not see the mandates on the system any longer. Meanwhile, the executive director that was in charge of that process had told the MD that everything was okay.
Wow.
It was just a report that made the MD to, what's going on here? And then he called the shop floor and they told him that it's a disaster. The tellers are waiting there. The customer present check. They call up the account. They can't see the face of the customer. So the issue of perception and how you expose yourself to the reality of the marketplace has a role to play. If you are inert, if you are cocooned in your space, you will be given the wrong impression about what is going on the shop floor.
And so there's a disconnect.
So there could be a disconnect between the reality and because sometimes you listen to your leaders speak and you're like, hey, is it this same
thing
country we're talking about? So that is a reality in leadership. It's for leaders to be able to deliberately step above that. If you are not able to, they will sell you lemon.
Okay. At the core of the president's speech has to do with, the electoral process. It talked about ensuring that, the next polls are credible and Nigerians truly have a say at the polls in determining who their leaders will be and how, the country moves forward in terms of direction and all of that. Looking at now the election or electoral process as a whole, from 1999 till date, 23 years uninterrupted, do you think there's growth in terms of our electoral process?
I think we have improved. It has been slow, but we've improved. I still remember vividly an election in Ondo State. A woman was the electoral boss. In the middle of concluding that election, he got a call from Asorok. And for the next 3 days, we didn't hear anything about that election. In this same period that we're talking about. Today, we don't have all those kind of things. Today, we have gone beyond just filling papers, which that may not even have any bearing with the actual voting that happens, please, to a situation in which things are getting electronic transmission, electronic collation. You saw the Edo election.
Yes.
Unlike those times when we have to wait for all those manual stuff. No. It's totally different now. And it will make a difference in the entire process.
Okay.
Of course, there is still room
for
improvement. We've seen how the delegate election played out, for example. And there's a huge room for improvement in how we determine who should even be a delegate.
Exactly, who should be a
especially
delegate.
Looking at the inducement that went on, Mr. Ologun. What are your thoughts on that?
You may not be able to deal with inducement because that has to do with politicians, and in this part of the world.
But it has more to do with the people who are at the receiving end.
Who are the people at the receiving end?
I'm talking about the people who get induced to vote.
They were delegates. I wasn't there.
Yes, but aside even the delegates, generally, Nigeria politics is still highly monetized.
That's what I'm trying to explain. Poverty is a tool. And a wise man said, the greatest weapon for a leader is to keep his people in poverty, because then you can manipulate them. So if we are in a society where delegates that are coming to choose candidates at the primary level are well off, they have their businesses going there, they have little to worry about, then why should you be talking about spraying dollars except that you take care of the logistics and everything? But in a society where people, the minimum wage that is 30,000 naira, you throw it inside a dollar, that is 600 naira to a dollar, you know what will bounce back. So you create survival mentality. And in a survival environment, man is ready to eat man. Morale is thrown into the dustbin. And the politicians understand that. And reportedly also, there were fake dollars flying. So you see all the key players now who have not been, they need to move to the pedestal of wisdom. What is the pedestal of wisdom? To come out, create Commonwealth. The former Prime Minister of UK, David Cameron, resigned from office because his position in Brexit did not fly. Do we resign in office in Nigeria? Okay, these are issues. So
it's a lifetime office.
Poverty is a tool. Insecurity has become a tool. I said it in 2019 election. And I still maintain my position, except there is a change. That we may come to the point where we are begging soldiers to occupy the space in a democracy. Reportedly, because of the attack in Owo recently, we got reports from some states that soldiers and policemen came to churches to say, oh, be at peace. So do we now have a militarized democracy? So if you don't set the foundation properly, you see, you will begin to have symptoms like this, stomach infrastructure and, you know, survival mentality. So, and that's why we are saying Nigeria is the greatest country in the world. This country has the largest deposit of proven gas in Africa. We have no business with saying we don't even have electricity, or we are buying gas at a high rate, or we are using firewood.
The grid is
so
collapsing.
let's maximize, and that is what our leaders have failed to achieve. Sir, the gold deposit in Zamfara should be able to earn that said about $2 billion annually. And people come to smuggle it. We are discussing oil theft. We are spending 100 billion naira to turn around moribund refinery. So you ask a simple question. What is the meaning of resourceful leadership? And do we have resourceful leadership in Nigeria?
Okay, just as a follow-up to what you've said, I'll take your thought on that as well. Quickly, you talked about, poverty being used as a tool, hence, you know, our political or electoral processes like this. Should we then introduce, you're a lawyer, should we have a law in place that will put a cap to how, you know, campaigns or elections are monetized? I'm saying that because there's the place of, you know, probably adopting the Western style of grassroots funding rather than having this. Again, it's just the view of some quarters. Would you subscribe to that?
The laws are there. But let me ask a simple question. If you wake up from your sleep and you hear that a nation where the stakeholders are struggling to pay 30,000 minimum wage, that nomination forms are being purchased by politicians for 100 million naira. I mean, you should be worried to your marrows. So you have misplaced priorities. The laws are there.
That would cap
one of the strong pillars of democracy is the rule of law. But the president, even at the time, spoke at the conference of an NBA, Nigerian Bar Association, that because of that security considerations can step down the rule of law. And the rule of law is the conveyor belt of justice and prosperity. So the laws are there. But are the laws respected? That is the big question. So these are issues for us.
Okay. Your view on that?
Well, some things are not just about legislation.
Okay.
They are about general reforms. Let's look at 1912. American democracy. Theodore Roosevelt was shooting for a third term. It was a more popular candidate than William Taft. But what happened in that incident was because of the corruption of delegates, that is to say, U.S. was even at this juncture at some point. The party chiefs at the state, they all literally have a grip on the delegates and they determine how they vote. That was what happened in that election. And Theodore Roosevelt lost. He was annoyed. He moved to another party to go and you know and all of that. Of course, he lost eventually that particular. Now that triggered a reform because people begin to ask questions. These delegates, why should they be more loyal to the party chief than to the people? And that began a rapid transformation of the delegate system in America. Of course, Theodore came back later and still won it. We need to look at this system and do a total reform. There will be the legal part, because if there are things that is the law that will help to straighten, you put the law in place. If there are things that requires citizens' education, you know, to change an engagement, you put all of that in place and ensure that we can have better quality delegates that will be representative of the people and not just wallet holders of politicians.
Okay.
So it's a total thing that we need to do. Some things law will do, some things are not by law. But you can imagine the number of laws we have against how much you can spend on a campaign, how much an individual can do. All those things are there in our electoral law. How many, even the account, go and ask for the account, 2019 account of political parties, have they rendered it? They're there in the laws.
But let's also look at the electoral umpire, that's Inec. There have also been talks about the fact that it is carrying the name independent. You know, before now it was the National Electoral Commission, NEC. But now it carries the independent. But is it truly independent? Because if we're talking about a democratic system, then we should have an electoral umpire that is truly independent when it comes to its operations. But is INEC truly independent?
You know, truly independent, that's a huge question. But theoretically, I would say yes. You know, and to the extent that they have brought quite a quantum of reforms lately, I would say yes. And we still expect them, if they respect these issues that have been put in place, they should really be independent. But I would just ask a deep question now. That Nigeria got a political independence in 1960, October 1. And if my president still needs to travel down to the UK for medical care in this season, are we truly independent? And I think I will rest it there.
but I'm still bringing it back to this case of independence of the INEC, because this is one issue that a lot of commentators have brought to the limelight. The fact that when it comes to elections, look at this current primaries that held. INEC had stated that by June 3, all parties should come up with their candidate. And then we see that one party was able to make them extend the date. And that's not even just the case. We've seen cases where there's a call from, powers that be, and then we hear that some things have to change around. Even in 2015 elections, we see that playing out.
2019 as well.
What would you say, or what would you react? How would you react?
It could be argued, I mean, the APC was a party that caused the extension, right? And they will argue that they were not, because there was an association of political parties in Nigeria made up of 18 parties who made a case to INEC requesting for it to be extended. Now, where it becomes tricky is the fact that, according to the law, they technically have up till the end of August.
Yes.
Because the law says 6 months to that election.
But so the umpire said you have till June 3.
The umpire was trying to ensure that he doesn't get trapped in a problem of time. Because after this election, sometime there will still be issues that you need to iron out. There will still be substitution of candidate and all of that. So that is why the umpire sets June 3. But if indeed there were certain negotiations on the side of the parties, if it is not APC, if it's a single party, it becomes funny. But if it becomes all the parties, those are these critical stakeholders, then it could be argued that INEC might be willing to consider. That is on one part. On the other side, independence requires financial independence. And we have seen this not just with INEC, we've seen it with judiciary, we've seen it with the legislators at the state, we've seen it with the local government. The guy who holds the wallet has an overbearing influence because he calls the tune. Yes. So part of what we must be able to do for INEC is also ensure a high level of financial independence. Can the INEC budget be a first line charge on the income of the federation, so that as it is landing in that consolidated federal account, you know that this percentage goes to INEC, and it doesn't require anybody waiting for anything. But as it is today, they wait. It is when the president, when the Ministry of Finance says, okay, we can now provide you this, that's when they get the money.
But there's also the pressing issue of the fact that it is the president who chooses who becomes the INEC boss. How can he then be truly independent?
Somebody still has to choose.
In an ideal situation.
But then he has to dance to his tunes.
In an ideal situation, the system should regulate that. And it comes back to all of us. Where lies your loyalty? Is it to the nation or to an individual within the system? Look at the case of the United States of America. Donald Trump would have loved to remain in the White House, but the system said no. So he rushed to the judiciary, he was bounced back. He rushed to the executive, he was bounced back. He rushed to the legislative arm, he was bounced back, because there is a system that primarily portrays, defends, and projects the interest of the people. And they told him, Trump, you got to go. Even if we have to push you out with wheelbarrow. Imagine that happened in Africa. You may find yourself experiencing something that the DSS will now come up to say, no, we must support this man to remain in office. This immigration will come. So we have a need for systemic health check to say, what do we have? If that is what we have in place, then we should not be discussing that the Accountant General of a federation is accused of cornering 84 billion. There should be a system that we even prevent. In the USA, when you earn a contract, there is a system that ensures the best of offers, you know, from any of the contractors gets it. If you are not satisfied, you petition. It will be, you know, investigated. We need system in place. And if we have that system, we can now say, okay, this is our educational projection for the next 50 years. This is how we are going. So you cannot just come and change it midway. You must pursue that direction. This is our health projection. This is our prosperity vision. This is the number of refineries we need by year 2030. It's not that somebody will just come, short land border, somebody will come, open a border somewhere, somebody will come, be telling me they want to go and be building NNPC filling stations in the Niger Republic. No!
You know, that refinery issue is another kettle of fish that we don't want to delve into right now. But let's wrap it up by getting your final thoughts. How can we achieve the true dividends of democracy in Nigeria?
Where it all starts from, unfortunately, it's not from system, but from a strong leadership.
Okay.
So we still need that leader who will help us to build systems. System doesn't just pop up. And it is when we have strong leadership and we're able to build various systems that we even check the leader himself effectively, that is when we begin to have the dividends.
Sorry to butt in. You think the change we need is a trickle down, you know, change from the top to the bottom, rather from the bottom to the top, where the people are aware and they all play their parts in ensuring that we have credible people in positions and credible structures in place?
It is because it is that consciousness you just mentioned that can only produce that leader I'm talking about.
Okay.
It is when the followership are conscious enough of where we're going. That is when we produce that leader who will help us to drive all the
Then that would be from the bottom up. It's not like a top to bottom trickle down economics. It's
you see, it's both ways. And my favorite example about labor leadership it's Dora Akunyili.
okay.
Some people did not know that there was an organization called NAFDAC before. And when he came, it wasn't as if he went to Oka and brought his people and said, okay, all these people go away. No, it was the same people. That same people all of a sudden transformed that institution. What changed? Only one thing. It was leadership, the right leadership. Every time we mention Lee Kuan Yew, it wasn't because all the Singaporeans suddenly transformed. No, they produced a leader called Lee Kuan Yew who helped to drive all that process. But how will a Lee Kuan Yew emerge? Or how will that leader emerge? He has to come from the consciousness of the followership to produce it.
Because the leaders are a true reflection of the people.
We all deserve the leaders we have.
Exactly. Let me come to you, Mr. Ologu. What are your thoughts? How do we achieve the true dividends of democracy?
I extend my declaration from what he just mentioned, and I recommend Paul Kagame of Rwanda to leadership consciousness. A man who rose up and said, no, we need a new narrative. And let me say this, poverty is a threat to all, and prosperity is a blessing to all. So what we need as a people is a commonwealth for common good. And Nigeria should become a nation that is truly united, a nation that has faith in the country, a nation that is peaceful, and a nation that makes positive progress. And on that note, we wish the future of this country the best.
Well, thank you very much, gentlemen. Quite instructive thoughts you've laid out this morning. Thank you for your time on iBrandTV. Well, we've been speaking with Mr. Ajide Ologun as well as Mr. Gbolahan Olojede. Thank you for your thoughts on the show this morning.
Nice to be here.
Thank you.
All right, we'll take a break now. When we come back, the sportsman is ready to take us into the world of sports. Please stay with us.